How has Poppy Playtime Chapter 3 changed since the alpha version of the game? When you play a game, you're playing the final version of what the developers determined was best. But oftentimes, there were many different versions of the story, map, and overall flow of a game before the final version you played. And sometimes the developers leave these files still active in the game. So I'm going to show you the early version of how the chapter used to start back in the garbage disposal area, when the developers were still whiteboxing the map out. This way, you can see how much it changed. I hope you enjoy. So the most important part of this is comparison. So let me real quick run you through the normal sequence of events for the start of Chapter 3. So Catnap tosses us down into a trash compactor that we must escape from. Once we make it out, we fall down below and can use the grab pack to pull us up to safety. In this room, there are several large pistons we must climb and jump across to reach a pathway up above. This next area features a destroyed office that is kind of unsettling, and a red door to continue onward. This doorway takes us to a jumping section across multiple pistons, and then we can see Catnap slither into the vents. We soon follow suit as we enter the vents ourselves, and we then finally reach the room we began in. We grab batteries, open a door, solve an electrical puzzle, and then meet Ali over the phone. Upon exiting, we come across the destroyed train, and then must make our way to another puzzle. After solving this, we can then go through the turnstiles and hitch a ride on the cable car. Okay, keep all of that in mind now, because we're turning back the clock to something a lot more blocky. So this map you see right here is the earliest version we can find of the garbage disposal area. And it's not exactly clear how you're supposed to begin here, but we can assume that it starts similar to the actual Chapter 3. So we have this large room right here that sort of serves as the trash compactor room, and within it we have a cube. Now looking around, we can see some scaffolding up above us, but in this current state, this blocked out level, there are no closing walls, so we don't have to worry about getting squished. There is an entry chute to this room, but up above, if we look at the scaffolding and the walkways above us, we can see that there is a red hand sort of icon on a piece of railing that we can interact with. Now, if we grab this and try to pull it, we'll see that the railing gets bent and tips over towards us. Now, it's unclear what the intentions were after you bent this piece of railing. We don't know for sure if the player was supposed to pull themselves up or exit this room in a different way. The only thing we have down with us is a cube that we can move around, but we can also see that the gray walls down here that are not checkered also appear to have slits in them, so it's unknown if we were supposed to get behind them. Now, continuing with the sort of natural flow of events that takes place in the actual chapter, we're going to go ahead and glitch through this wall to our right and come across this room full of pistons. So in this room, we have several pipes, and we can see that to our left, there is a bunch of pipes that lead back to the trash compactor, and off to our right, we have this sort of like red pipeway. The blocked out level leads us to these various piston platforms that go up quite a ways. Now down below, we can actually crouch and go under the pipes that leads us back to the trash compactor room, so it's very possible that this was perhaps the way we were supposed to go. Now, trying to climb up these pistons is a bit annoying. I can see why they changed this. As you can see, there are several pistons that we have to jump up, and we must time it perfectly. If we do not jump at the maximum height, we'll fall down, and we have to start all over again. Now, Poppy Playtime, as a game, does not have a sort of mantling or clambering system, so you can't grab onto any edges. Based on this, I can kind of see why they scrapped this. These pipes up here that we walk across also rotate, and if you were to fall off, it is quite annoying trying to get back up here. Now, something else I'll talk about is the player controller that we're using is not the actual controller that is used in the main game. So there is no head bob, we just sort of glide around, and it's sort of like an older version of that. Basically a testing version, if you will. But now that we're up top, we can crouch underneath this ledge, and as we can see over here is the upper scaffolding that we can walk on that is above the trash compactor room. However, based on the current layout, we cannot actually make it through this wall, so we're gonna have to glitch over here. And voila! Now we're above the trash compactor room, and we can walk around and explore a bit. So this office area that normally has the destroyed scene in the original chapter, we can find this placeholder text that reads as follows. First, gruesome evidence of what Nappy Cat has done to the other toys in the collection. Now this room itself is empty because this is the blocking phase. They don't really want to commit to anything just yet beyond this initial outline because they want to make sure it nails all the story points and it flows nicely. So over here on the right, we have two different cubes. There's a yellow cube and a bigger blue cube, and both of these cubes can be pulled towards us, but in my initial play session, I was not entirely sure what they were used for, and that is because everything I just talked about is only one half of this area. It was at this point that I realized that the route we took wasn't actually the real route. because on the other side of the trash compactor, we have a route that is very similar to the final product. If you were to somehow make your way through the wall, we can find handholds above us and text that reads, "Safety harness required for all repairs." We can grab these, just like in the finalized version of Chapter 3, and pull ourselves up. We then come across a room full of giant pistons that we can assume were once moving, and we could take them up top. And this ultimately leads us to a crawl space that takes us to the top of the trash compactor room. These cubes were here because we're supposed to move this debris before continuing, and that route makes a lot more sense. But now we're going to change the way that the game is rendered so you can get a better view of how this map actually looks. And we're going to go up and around up the staircase that takes us to the area that normally has the giant pistons. So in this version of the map, we just have this floating scaffolding. We do not have to jump across the pistons in this room because they're not here. And honestly, I wasn't even able to reach the platform in front of me. Trying to make a run and jump to it makes me fall down below, and we land on the death barrier. And because it is not intact, we can walk on it. Down here, we can see there is an exit to a vent. We cannot go in it. However, this vent is connected to the one up above, but if we come around this corner, we can actually see Catnap stuck up in the vent, just standing there, waiting for what would normally be a trigger. However, they do not move in this version of the map, and there is also no real way to get to them. So if we take a look out of bounds, we can find various handles that we could grab, and we can also find a Nintendo 64 controller, or what looks like one of the third-party controllers that were sold alongside the Nintendo 64. So going back to the vents, this vent section is actually very similar to how it is in the final version. So we can go into the vents, and when we fall down below, to our left, there is going to be a grating that we can open up that takes us into this next room. And this room is a bit different than the final version, and this room is the room where Catnap usually throws the player down into the trash compactor. To our left, we have this blue poster that is a stand-in for an actual poster that says, "Huggy can keep a secret, be like Huggy." And then there's a disclaimer at the bottom that says, "Your NDA contractually obligates you to be like Huggy." In the corner, we have this blocky bench, and we have this giant TV, and there's also a pool table. What's kind of cool is the pool ball can be grabbed and thrown about, and it rolls all over the place, and it's very easy to fling across the room. Now, there's also a refrigerator, or what is supposed to be a refrigerator, that is already open, and we have several cabinets with all the doors on them being misaligned. We can see that there are 2 battery slots, but the door is already open, and the bathroom we can just crawl right under, and there is no bathroom in here. It actually takes us out to the boundaries of the level, and we can look around and follow it for a little bit. And there also is a crawl space we can go into out of bounds that takes us into this weird nook that I'm not entirely sure what it's for. But we're going to move on. We can move down this long red tinted hallway and hang a left, and then we have the elevator that says restricted access. This is normally where the electrical puzzle begins in the actual chapter, and there's nothing behind the elevator door, but if we follow up the staircase, we'll eventually come to a message on a wall. And this message reads, "All personnel must ensure the secured entrance closes behind them. Failure to comply will result in reassignment from Class 3 status." Now, this is normally the door/bookcase thing that seals us in the office after we solve the electrical puzzle. We cannot get through it at this moment, so we nope it from existence, and now we're in the room where Ali calls us. However, there is no phone on the wall. So at this point, it seems like the whole phone thing actually wasn't a pacing element for the whole chapter. And this is interesting because in another section of these unfinished levels, there's a phone you can answer that has a different voice behind it telling you to basically get out. And this really makes me wonder how much of the pacing for this chapter, at least by phone, changed possibly after FNAF Ruin came out. Now, many people have drawn comparisons between how Ali communicates with you and Gregory does from FNAF Ruin, and it makes you wonder if after FNAF Ruin came out, they added this as a pacing element because of how effective it was for FNAF Ruin. Again, that is just random speculation. I can't back that up, but it is interesting to see that the phone does not exist here right now. Now, beyond the next door, we enter the area where the Play Care train crash was at. And as you can see, there is a very destroyed train here. It even says big train crash up above. And then it also says, also have some particle effects, so it looks like the tunnels are at risk of collapsing. And so we can continue down this train track. Eventually, it's going to take us around this bend. It's a bit hard to get up because we have these like stand-in boulders or rubble, but we can jump up this one and get back up top. And then we come around to the entrance of what eventually will lead us to Ludwig's ride. Now there isn't really a clear way to get over to the other side at this point, unless I overlooked it. But before moving on, let's take a look down this hallway, and you can see this tunnel comes to an abrupt end, and it just kind of goes out in a straight line. Now the flooring does go out for quite a ways off into this little like strip. And if we fly above some things over here, we're gonna see that there's also a grab handle above the ceiling, which would make sense because currently there's no way to get across. So we probably would use this to swing across to the entrance to Ludwig's ride. So this whole area is baked in red light. We have this door off to the right that says maintenance, and we have a door off to the left that says security. Just like in the actual Chapter 3, the only door that will open from the outside is the left door. And so we open it, we find a TV inside or a container that maybe represents a TV, and there's also another hallway. So we head down this hallway, and we can see on the wall there is the words PlayCare Access written, and to our left on the shelf there is what looks like to be an early tape or a switch of some kind. Now we can grab it, but we can't pull it. It's basically glued to the shelf, and this is normally where that puzzle is that lets you power up the turnstiles. The door also in here will not open, so we have to go back out and around. So if we make our way out and up the stairs to go up top, there's going to be some stands set up, and there's also going to be some text on the wall. It says, "See the world through the eyes of a child on Elliot's Express." Now the stands appear to have merchandise behind them, and we can see these pink and blue sphere things, possibly representing Huggy Wuggy or Kissy Missy dolls. But again, there's no point in putting detail into it because it's just to capture the feeling of this area. Now going through the door, it says watch your step before the cable car, and off to the left, we can see a filing cabinet with the words "Let's Go" written on the wall. Off to the right, we can see the same thing. It also says "Let's Go." Now entering the cable car doesn't do anything. There is no cutscene, there is no warp. This is the end of this map for the purpose of blocking out this first stretch of Chapter 3. Now heading out of bounds for a second, earlier in the level there is this switch you can hit that says emergency control. And inside the wall we can see these pistons are firing off back and forth. We can grab and pull this switch, but I'm not entirely sure what it does. We can also grab this doorway thing over here and move it up. But walking out of bounds, there's a lot of interesting things just scattered about, like this random staircase that you can't go down, and of course that strange Nintendo 64 controller I mentioned earlier that you can actually pick up like a battery. I'm not entirely sure what the controller was for, but you can throw it around, which is pretty neat. But with that sort of brings us to the end of this blocking level for the intro to Chapter 3. So I hope you guys enjoyed this look behind the scenes of the early development process, and I'll see all of you in the next video real soon. Cheers!